Hey, Mondays. Am I right, you guys? It is Monday. I'm home. I'm up early to bring you the kind of analysis you expect from HATM Summer 21. So, um, talking about SNL today, I'm going to try to find some time to circle back to Fresh Off the Boat because time got away from me on that Always Sunny video. I meant to do them both together, but I'll try to sneak because there's some important stuff from Fresh Off the Boat that I want to get in there, get to you. So hopefully that will come this week at some point. But turning our focus to sketch comedy. Um, I've been reading through your comments. A lot of comments kind of in the similar vein. Um, First, I want to talk about sketch in general. It seems to be the medium most conducive to our current day and age, right? Um, they're usually, they're usually short videos um, that sort of combine TV and stand up, if that makes sense, right? Because it has you know, sketch can have the focus of stand up with the cinematography or the cinematic uh, feel of television, if that makes any sense. Probably doesn't, but it's sort of this marriage I feel like of stand up and television. It's like let's make it shorter. Let's focus it on one specific idea, right? Let's make the joke, yeah, about let's make the joke more specific, less broad. And, how can we, again, exaggeration to the point of realization? Every sketch involves an exaggeration of some point. In fact, um, I used to teach a humorous writing class, and I have tons of students of mine have gone on to take classes at Upright Citizens Brigade in the city, UCB. The improv school, founded by Amy Poehler and Matt Walsh and Matt Bessert and Ian Roberts. Um, Ian Roberts? Yeah. Anyway, there's a formula to writing sketches, and you see it most of the writers for SNL, performers on SNL over the last probably 15 years have come from an improv background. And improv is a step towards sketch, right? So like you improv and you come up with a character or a scene or something, you find out it's funny, then you write the sketch of that, and then the sketch becomes. So it used to be in the 80s and 90s specifically, SNL, when it was looking for talent, would look for stand up comedians. Because that was, the milieu of comedy was stand up. And that's where this the stand up comedy boom was happening. So producers, Lorne Michaels, all the producers of SNL would go do these stand up showcases and they'd pick guys. And that, led to mixed results. I think, people like Chris Rock. Chris Rock was a terrible stand up, or it was is one of the greatest stand ups, but it was terrible on SNL. Tracy Morgan, Adam Adam Sandler. I don't think he's very funny at anything, but he was a stand-up. David Spade was a stand-up. Like most of those people, that's where they looked. And it wasn't until like the late 90s that they really started to switch over and look at improv slash sketch for talent. And all these schools opened up, UCB in New York, Second City in Chicago, and Groundlings in LA. They started to really churn out. So most of the performers you see on SNL now, actually most of the extras you see on sitcoms and comedy shows are from one of those three schools. They have an improv slash sketch background, which makes sense, right? Stand up doesn't always look at Pete Davidson. Like they don't know what to do with Pete Davidson because he has a stand up background. Most of what he does on that show, his sketches are pretty bad. If he's in a sketch, he just looks uncomfortable. Most of what he does on the show now is he does those monologues, basically. He does stand up, basically, during Weekend Update. So that's an interesting shift that's happened over the last 20 years or so as they've moved more towards that. But anyway, sketch is it's the perfect thing. They're short, they're to the point for the most part, right? They're only focusing on one idea. I was talking about UCB. I used to teach humorous writing. I teach writing sketch, and you're basically picking what they call a game. Basically, the joke is the game, and you're playing the game in the sketch. And it starts with this one very simple concept, and you continue to exaggerate and expand it out until it's absolutely ridiculous. And that's sort of the pop of the sketch, is how ridiculous can we make it and resolve it at the end. So it's built on that idea I mentioned a couple times already, exaggeration to the point of realization. Someone said, who was saying that? Someone was saying, oh, some of the sketches were over the top. Again, yes, to a point, right? That's humor, is to be over the top enough so that you're like, oh, I think it was Matt. Yeah, Matt mentioned that. And yeah, exactly. Like sketch more than anything is designed to be over the top, as it were. Um, so anyway, um, sketch is it seems tailor made for your generation, the internet generation, basically, right? Short videos, usually less than 5 minutes. Some sketches run long, whatever. Less than 3 to 5 minutes. Like there's a focal point, there's a joke or a bit or an idea that they want to get across. They establish it, exaggerate, and then a little misdirection at the end, and then you laugh and hopefully think about it or whatever, right? So I also think, and I mentioned this in the description, like it's almost in real time. Like sketch is happening. It has that unique power that the other mediums don't have, right? TV shows take months to produce, for the most part, other than South Park. Movies take oftentimes years to make. Stand up, like those, you see a stand up special, that's all that material's been, you know, been worked on for upwards of a year. Sketch, you can something can happen. You can write a sketch and you can have it online the same day, right? Now, mainstream sketch doesn't work that way, but it has the ability to comment on our culture in real time, and that is something that I don't think we should underestimate. So SNL is doing it every week, right? Has been basically doing it every week since 1975. So you can go back and look through Saturday Night Live and see how see their take on politics, see their take on race, see their take on all these kinds of things from 1975 till now, right? Every president, every political regime, every sort of all the movements that are social movements that our culture has gone through, SNL was there with an opinion, right? With maybe um, some different perspectives. Um, and who was talking about? Somebody was talking about. I was talking about before this idea of bias. Like everyone, it's certainly left leaning, right? Comedy is left leaning. Um, I think in general, because why? Well, comedy asks questions. Comedy is seeking truth. That these days, sadly, has become a liberal trait, right? Um, we've politicized everything to such a degree that, you know, now even seeking truth is a political statement. Somehow we fucked that up. Um, shoot, I'm looking for somebody made a comment. I can't. Um, so yeah, sketch is. I mean, think about like TikTok and stuff like that. Like you know, those are sketches basically. Um, so it's it's just funny that SNL's been doing it forever. I mean, it's an institution. So like, a bunch of you were commenting on, oh, well, my generation, we don't watch it, blah blah blah. I'm like, yeah, but I, its popularity, like Danny and Michaela were talking kind of about, like, well, it's not popular. This is why it's not popular. Like, I think it's as popular, but just maybe not, in your circles. And Danny made a good point, right? It's it might not be popular because it was so influential. In other words, the Key and Peele and I Think You Should Leave. There are more places to get sketch, right? For the longest time, and that was a good point. It was just SNL, and then Mad TV came out in like I want to say the late '90s, and it was like just a poor man's SNL. Well, then the internet sort of spurned on. Well, then you had Chappelle's in 2000, the early 2000s, which was groundbreaking, sort of redefined sketch, right? Um, so you had SNL, and then Mad TV, and then you have like Chappelle's, and then Inside Amy Schumer, which is as good a sketch show as ever. Inside Amy Schumer, Key and Peele, I Think You Should Leave, Alternatino. So there's been this sort of growth, um, which is a good thing, and um, I think those shows don't exist without SNL, right? They obviously paved the way, and they continue to. I think they continue to sort of, maybe they're not leading the way anymore, but they're certainly, walking next to these other shows. And Danny will do We'll talk about later in the semester, in the session, we'll talk about both Key and Peele and I Think You Should Leave, among others. So there's more sketch coming, but you gotta start. You gotta start here. Um, so, and again, like the popularity, like I mentioned in the description, like I don't care if you like the show or not. I don't care. Like that's not why we're here, right? We can have those conversations outside of class, but the class is supposed to be talking about, and this is something that you all should take into account with your comments. Specifically, this one is conducive to it. Like, don't talk about the comedy. Talk about what the comedy is talking about, if that makes sense. So, like a lot of you in your comments were talking about, oh, I liked 39 Cents and the Zentrex, the Rock one with the erectile dysfunction drug or whatever. I like those. Like, okay, that's great. What are those about? Right? That's why we're here. That's humor across the media, right? Getting to the ideas that drive the comedy. And let's talk about race. Let's talk about sexuality, right? Maddie mentioned, they do, these sketches about sexism and racism, but you don't talk about we're not talking about sexism and racism in our culture. That's what I want to do. I want these sketches, these TV shows, these movies, these things that we watch to be sort of portals into larger discussions about bigger things. Other than just like, is the show popular? Do I like it? Is it funny? Like those kinds of things. Those are for other times. So keep that in mind when everything you're watching, right? Don't talk about the comedy. Talk about what the comedy is talking about. So if you can go through each of these, right? Um, each of these sketches I chose for very specific reasons to hopefully spark discussions about specific things, right? There's a handful of in the last since Me Too and everything, the last 5 years or so, and actually the last 20 years with SNL. Again, they were ahead of that curve too. Women have sort of dominated the show. If you go back to like Tina Fey and Maya Rudolph and Anna Gasteyer and like those casts in the early 2000s, they gave way to Tina Fey became the head writer. So there's been you can track this sort of fourth wave feminist movement through Saturday Night Live, and now it's really sort of taking shape right before our eyes. If you look at just this, there's like a handful of sketches that I posted that are about that and kind of trying to again shape the discussion of women and Me Too and Time's Up in very, I think, interesting ways, right? There's the This Is Not a Feminist song, this idea that you can try to be feminist and be an ally for people and still be criticized for doing it wrong, right? They don't want to say anything that will offend anybody. Like this current cancel culture has created a space where people are afraid to transgress and move forward or be wrong or lest they get canceled, right? So the feminist song is funny, it's ironic and sort of because they're singing about writing a feminist song, but then they're sort of self-analyzing and just trying to cover their asses. Like at some point, you're gonna fucking kick some people in the nuts, right? You're gonna kick some people in the crotch along the way, right? I think comedy is about breaking through that. I mean, like, I don't. This is what I feel. This is how I think. I don't care what. At some point, you can't care, And that actually ties into the Dudley sketch, right? The Dudley sketch is mainstream media is so concerned with what everybody thinks and feels that it will listen to literally any criticism and put it into their show to please everybody. And what happens as a result is you end up, it's not art, right? A joke I typically use about something like that is like, I said, I don't think most TV shows are created to be what they end up being, right? Producers and directors and executives and writers get put into this mix with audience reaction and things like that. And once your episode 1 airs, you hear all the criticisms. And then shows usually start to change to abide those. Like taking the public's consideration into seriously ruins most art, right? So what happens when you make a TV show and the network executives say, "Oh, you can't do that. You can't say this. You got to take that out. This advertiser doesn't like that, so you got to take this out." And then the audience sees it, says, "We don't like this character, and I don't like this," blah, blah, blah. And then you keep changing it. You keep taking out anything of value or interesting or that's sort of pure to what the show is supposed to be, and you inevitably end up with Full House, right? Just this saccharine, watered down, um, you know, version of a TV show. And that's what the Dudley sketch is kind of about. Trying to appease everybody, please nobody. So I always say, credo number 9, 8, you're never going to get 100% approval, so why seek any? Boom. Anyway, back to the feminist thing, or the women's thing. There's a feminist. This is not a feminist song, and then the next, the deodorant for men about to get busted for sexual harassment. Like right when all that stuff broke and those movements really started to gain momentum, they did this sketch, and they were doing a bunch of sketch there, and a lot of it is hit and miss with comedy. Like you have to be able to say things and maybe be wrong and fail and miss the mark if you're going to learn about any of this stuff and maybe grow as a person. Like I think comedy, you have certainly more than other arenas, you have the space to do that, right? Amy Schumer did some sketches and people were like, "Oh, you can't do that." She was like, "All right, I'll admit, like I missed the point, I missed the mark, but I still have to, like I thought it would be funny. I thought people would take it this way. They didn't. We move on, and I try to, you know, try to be better the next time. Like then the deodorant commercial is cringy almost. Think about it. It came out, and they aired it like in the middle of the most volatile points of the Me Too movement, and it was risky, and it went there. And I mentioned this before, like comedy's job is to go there. If you're not going there, why are you doing it? Like if you're not seeking the truth, if you're not really pushing boundaries, why are we doing this, right? So that one, I think it's more the attempt and the intent, I think, in some cases, and I thought that was a good one. Welcome to Hell, right? They made this bubblegum pop song about, the irony of that. Bubblegum pop song about how women are in a constant state of hell out of fear and what men, generally our patriarchal society, has taken away from them already. right? One was like just walking, right? Like literally everything. Um, and then Mom Jeans is an older one, but that was sort of, I have a whole thing about this about Mom Jeans is this idea that once you become a mom, you remove yourself from being a woman, right? Like in this feminist discussion and movement of empowerment for women, mothers are typically just like, oh well, fuck you. You already fucking drank the Kool-Aid, right? You married some dude and you had a bunch of kids. Like, fuck, you're out. You're out of the fucking mix. Um, the line from Mom Jeans is when you've given up giving up, put on your mom jeans, right? You're not a mom anymore. You're not a woman anymore. You're a mom, right? And that is an interesting statement to make, right? And then um, the sketch for women, right? When Scarlett Johansson and it was Aidy Bryant come in, and Kyle and Beck have written this sketch for women and completely, right? I mean, that's a hilarious sketch, right? They completely tokenize the women in the way that Hollywood typically does, right? And it's just them, the two guys talking about women not listening, like that'll. I mean, that sketch is hilarious. So like, you can see, what's that one? Yeah, you can see them shaping. It's not a. I don't think it's a biased look. I think it's a nuanced look at these movements, um, which is, you know, where else can you find that? And I always argue with people like I personally, I think more people than me agree with this. I'd rather shape my thoughts about these movements and feminism and whatever it might be via comedy than, you know, read an essay by a feminist author or listen to a lecture about it. Not because I don't, I think they can be equally helpful and informative. Let's put it that way. If you're equipped to get the um, information, right? If you're equipped to, if you're able to equate them, right? Because most people wouldn't even equate those two things. They'd say, oh, well, one's a stupid comedy and one's a serious lecture or whatever, or essay or article. Like, you get the same thing out of them, out of both. And I would argue that the humor is better because, like I mentioned before, one of my credos, like it's the byproduct is sort of helping shape your sort of identity through these sketches. You're not thinking about, oh, this person's sort of wagging their finger and, lecturing me or preaching to me about whatever it might be. Um, yeah, I'm kind of so that's the main takeaway of this video. I want you guys to think about that when you're watching whatever you're watching for class, right? Don't talk about in your comments and in your sort of analysis. Talk less about the comedy and more about what the comedy is talking about. So like get to the point why you did a better job with Always Sunny, right? And sort of trying to figure out its take on whatever issues were at play there. But these sketches they they're all made for that, right? Each one has a very specific idea that they want you to take away from it. So like let's talk about those ideas more than, oh, it's popular. It's not popular anymore. It's funny. It's not funny. Um, yeah, that's that's the takeaway there. Okay, I'm at a half hour now. I feel like I didn't say anything I wanted to say, but um, oh, I'll end with this. Paige mentioned like they talk about things that shouldn't be mocked, right? Let me see how you worded that, Paige. Um, blah, blah, blah. These are serious issues in society that shouldn't be mocked, but it's a relief to bring some sort of light to the subject. Yeah, they shouldn't be mocked in that I mentioned this before. I don't think they are being mocked, but they definitely should be talked about, right? Like, if nothing else, these sketches can be catalysts for discourse. And that's what I think our culture has to start to acknowledge if we're going to fucking survive. Like, literally, if we're going to survive as a culture, we have to start acknowledging humor as a catalyst for change in discourse and see it as such and not be like, you know, it's not, I hate this comedian, I hate that movie, I hate that show. Um, or it's silly, it's stupid, it's comedy, who cares? Like, I think we need to embrace that sort of the critical aspects of comedy um, more widely for us to move anywhere at this point. Um, enjoy your day, and you'll see more of me um, Wednesday. I'll be back with some more hot takes.